this is lesson 4.1. A lot of this stuff is going to be repeat of stuff that you have seen before, especially this first part of factoring. But let's go ahead and review factoring by grouping. So we'll do one together, and then I'll have you try the other two. So we're going to group the first two terms together and the last two terms. Then we're going to factor out the common binomial. So what's the biggest thing that I can pull out of these first two? An x squared. So that goes out front, and then I have an x minus 1 holds that place when I divide the same thing by the same thing. And then over here I can pull out a negative 5. Remember that your parentheses should match. So notice these parentheses here, those binomials match. That's a good sign. Last, we're going to take these greatest common factors, in a sense, that I pulled out, put those together. And then what they have in common is the second part of my answer. And that's it. So go ahead and try the next one. Again, group. Now pull out the greatest common factor of each. Put those together, make sure your parentheses match. So pause the video, try 2 and 3 on your own. Again, you need to be practicing factoring. We're going to start having some factoring mastery quizzes in class to make sure that you have factoring down. And that's the number one thing that students come back and say, thank you, thank you, thank you for making you factor, because it just makes your life a lot easier from this point on. All right, so pause that video, try 2 and 3 on your own, and then check when you're ready. All right, so this first two, you should have pulled out an x squared. And then the next one pulled out a negative 15. And notice that your parentheses match. So your answer is x squared minus 15. And then x minus 2. And always double check to make sure that you can't simplify that farther, which you can't. So you're done. And then on the next one, you should have gotten x squared plus 4. And you should have gotten 2x plus 1. And we cannot simplify this first thing because it's not a minus sign in there, so it is done. All right, let's get to our lesson now. Vertex form, we have seen. That's not anything new, where we have the a in front, we have the x minus h squared, and then we have the k behind it. And then that axis of symmetry is our x equaling our h. So right there. That is our axis of symmetry. Okay, so we have vertex and axis of symmetry that we're identifying. So this is actually a repeat of what we've done before. And we have our vertex at opposite of the inside number, so negative 5, negative 8. Axis of symmetry is x equals negative 5, whatever my x value is there. And then the transformation. So what happened? Well, the negative in front is a reflection over the x-axis. And then we have the 1/2 out front, which we know is a vertical compression by 1/2. The 5 that's inside here is going to move us left 5. All right, so that's left 5. And then we have the negative 8 bringing us down 8. All right, I want you to try this next one on your own. So pause the video, find the vertex, the axis of symmetry, and tell me the two things that happened, how it transformed. And you should have 3, 1, x equals 3. And it moved right 3 and up 1. All right, our next examples are going to be the standard form, which again we have done before. But we use that negative b over 2a to get our x value of our vertex point. And then we plug it back in to get the y value. All right, so, and then we have minimum here, kind of like a hole at the bottom of the hole, and then maximum here up top. So that it will be kind of our only real new thing. So A is always A. B we use to help us get that vertex point. And then C is kind of helps us get our y-intercept in a sense. So let's go ahead and look at this one. This is a positive 6, so it would open up. When that front number A is greater than 1, then it makes that happy face and it opens up. And then when a is less than 0, when it's a negative, it's opening down. So we can tell those things when it's in standard form. So to find that axis of symmetry, x is equal to negative b over 2a. To find the vertex, we use negative b over 2a to find the x, and then we plug that in into the function. So f of, we'll do negative b over 2a. Whatever you get for that negative b over 2a, you plug it into the function to get your y value. And then the y-intercept, that's when we plug in 0 for x. Plug in 0 for x. That gives us the intercept. We've done that before. And then we just talked about minimum and maximum. That's when it's opening up or down. We look at that vertex point. So for minimum, that's when it would be a is greater than 1. And for a maximum, that's when a would be less than 0, not 1. And then we would just see that vertex point as a minimum versus a maximum. So let's go ahead and do an example of finding all these kind of parts of it. So for our opening upward or downward, we can just look at our A. So if it's positive, well, we know it's going to open upward. Kind of circle that. There we go, boxed in. All right, find the axis of symmetry. So that's when we want to find our x. So we are going to use that negative b over 2a. So here's my a, here's my b, here's my c. So it's negative and then negative 4, so we have a double negative, over 2 times 2. So we have 4 divided by 4, which is 1. So x equals 1, which is the first part of my vertex. I know x is 1. Well, how can I find y? Well, I can plug it back into the function up here. So when I plug that back in, I have 2 times 1 squared minus 4 times 1 plus 5. And 1 squared is 1 times 2 is 2, minus 4 times 1 is 4, plus 5. So I get negative 2 plus 5, which is 3. So there's my vertex. To find my y-intercept, that's when we would plug in 0 for x. So we're going to take 2 times 0 squared, oops, here we go, and then minus 4 times 0, and then plus 5. So this gets me 0, this gets me 0, so it's just 0 plus 5, which is 5. So that intercept is going to be 0, 5, where I would touch the y-axis. And then minimum or maximum, well, we know if it's opening upward, we're going to have a minimum. And what's the minimum? Well, it's always going to be our vertex point, because that is the point at which it's the lowest or highest. So this minimum is 1, 3. All right, so using your notes from above, I want you to try number 2. Everything that we did for number 1, you do for number 2. So pause and then press play when you're ready to check. All right, hopefully you have filled in number 2 and you got down. You got x is equal to negative 1. And then when you plug in that negative 1 into in for x, you would get your y value of 4. And then your y-intercept, when you plug in 0 into your x's, you would wind up with 3 for your y-intercept. And then this one is going to be, since it's opening downward, it's going to be a maximum, and it's going to be a maximum at negative 1, 4 at your vertex point, comma 4. All right, lastly, we are going to kind of actually do some application of problems of how this works in the real world. So we are going to do the same thing that we did before, that negative b over 2a, and plugging it back in. So the only thing we need to do is identify a, b, and c. So we have a 0.024 for a, we have a negative 1.28 for b, and we have a 33.6 for c. So when we plug in negative b over 2a, and then we type that into our calculator, we get 26.6 repeating. So we type that into the function, and using our calculator, making sure to enter that carefully. You would then multiply these, actually square this and then multiply these two things. So squaring and multiplying here would get me 17.06 repeating. And then multiplying these two things here would get me negative 34.13 repeating. And then I would add from left to right to get my answer of 16.53 repeating centimeters. So that is the highest point that it would be at rowing space results. Sorry, at that height. I think actually we're at a minimum for this one because this is positive, so it's going to open upward. So this would be our minimum that it would be at. So try this next one on your own, and you can try this in your calculator, plugging this in for A, B, and C. But I'd really like for you to try this method, and then we can always check it on the calculator, and I'll show you how to do that in class. So identify your A, B, and C, so negative 0.05. Again, pausing after I get these. All right, so pause. You're going to do negative B over 2A, and then you're going to plug it back into the function to check. All right, so let's check. We should have x equaling 49 when you do negative B over 2A. And then you're going to plug that back in. So negative 0.025 times 49 squared plus 2.45 times 49 minus 30. So when you simplify squaring and then multiply, you would get negative 60.02, or 0.03 if we round, plus 120.05 minus 30. And then add from left to right, and you would get 30.025, or about 30 miles per gallon. There we go, as our maximum. So this 49, what it represents is the S, which is your speed. And then this speed would give you that 30 miles per gallon.